University of Human Unity project, which is sponsoring this event, began in 2007, and we have, in the last almost 9 years, conducted a number of different research projects, conferences and seminars, and all of that material is available on our website, University of Human Unity. So if you browse that, University of Human Unity, it will be the first link that comes up. And in fact, last year, after 9 years of development, we had about 200,000 views on the website. So this material that we're gradually producing and putting online is actually being accessed. And I've been pleasantly surprised sometimes meeting people abroad who said they listened to all of that series or they read all of those papers. So we don't know who actually is accessing this material or to what level it's being assimilated, but it's nonetheless significant, I think, that it's being done in the first place with some continuity, and it's there. So, for example, we did a first series of presentations on the integral approach to knowledge in 2007. In 2009, we had courses again on the integral paradigm and on the philosophy of evolution and the poetry of Sri Aurobindo. In 2010, we had an international conference on spirituality beyond religion. In 2012, we had a conference on the integral paradigm of knowledge, which is our topic again in this series. In 2013, Vladislav had already begun his work on music and yoga, and he will be commenting on that research that he's been doing in conjunction with Vladimir's research, which is the primary work on the integral paradigm of knowledge, which is based upon Sri Aurobindo's commentaries on the Vedas and Upanishads and other texts. And Vladimir is a Sanskritist and is able to extract from both the original text and Sri Aurobindo's commentaries this perspective on how is it that we know anything. This is a very prominent question in science and psychology and neurology even today. And so the thorough treatment that was given to that question as early as the Upanishads has relevance today. And it has relevance because it's a way of thinking that we're familiar with, and it's been developing especially for the last 300 years or so. And I'll be speaking about that philosophical context in the second part of the day after lunch. Then, what else have we done? There have been many studies and lectures on the Rig Veda, the Upanishads, and the Gita by Vladimir and Nishta, who are both Sanskritists. And all of these things, as I said, are online. So, to begin today, I would like to just invoke the goddess. Savitri is the answer to all the questions. But Savitri also asks the questions. Savitri is the new consciousness. And in this canto, the call to the quest, the yogi puts the question to us. And anything that we do in this context, in the context of the work of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and the question of knowledge and the elevation of human consciousness, is a response, needs to be a response to this question. O force-compelled, fate-driven, earth-born race. O petty adventurers in an infinite world, and prisoners of a dwarf humanity. How long will you tread the circling tracks of mind around your little self and petty things? But not for a changeless littleness were you meant. Not for vain repetition were you built. Out of the immortal's substance you were made. Your actions can be swift revealing steps. Your life a changeful mold for growing gods. A seer, a strong creator is within. The immaculate grandeur broods upon your days. Almighty powers are shut in nature's cells. A greater destiny waits you in your front. This transient earthly being, if he wills, can fit his acts to a transcendent scheme. He who now stares at the world with ignorant eyes, hardly from the inconscious night aroused, that look at images and not at truth, can fill those orbs with an immortal sight. Yet shall the Godhead grow within your hearts. You shall awake into the Spirit's air and feel the breaking walls of mortal mind. And hear the message which left life's heart dumb. And look through nature with sun-gazing lids, and blow your conch shells at the eternal's gate. Authors of earth's high change, to you it is given to cross the dangerous spaces of the soul. And touch the mighty mother stark awake. And meet the omnipotent in this house of flesh. And make of life the million-bodied one. So as we open the book of knowledge, it's necessary for us to remember what is beyond it. And how do we use this ancient knowledge for the purpose that it was given, to actually transcend the mind. So, Vladimir?
I will be sitting if you don't mind. When we speak about consciousness in general, we imagine always something very abstract. We refer to consciousness as if it is something existing by itself, without really looking and understanding what it is. It's the most abstract word used by us, and we all refer to it all the time. It's kind of interesting, yes? We somehow, as if we know what it is, and at the same time we have no idea what it is. But in the Upanishads, they do not refer to consciousness altogether. They refer only to the faculties of consciousness. Sight, hearing, word, mind, feeling, and being in the body. Annam pranam chakshuk shrotram mano vacham iti. This is the definition by Bhrigu of what is consciousness. It's not consciousness, it's faculties. And these faculties are coming from universal Purusha, who represents that consciousness to which we always refer. But if for a moment you imagine that we would not have these faculties, how would we really deal with consciousness? If we would not have sight, hearing, word, mind, thought, feeling, and not feel ourselves in the body, what kind of consciousness would it be? Then we understand that, consciousness is not just an abstraction. It's a very concrete thing, which is always present in our life. So this was the inspiration to study it, and then I saw that in Savitri, Sri Aurobindo always deals with faculties, throughout, on all the levels, from the physical to the most supramental and beyond. There is always sight, hearing, word, thought, feeling, sense. All these faculties are present throughout. And when he describes the level and perception on a particular level, there will be these faculties involved. So we looked into these faculties and started to understand them better, how they relate to each other. So the whole presentation is around these faculties, how they were seen before, our mental structure of consciousness, and that means in pre-Sankhyayic world, because Sankhya is the philosophy which begins with the domination of the mind over the faculties of consciousness. But before there was another paradigm, where all the faculties were free and were connected to the higher consciousness, bypassing ego sense, ahankara. But we will speak about it in detail. So Sri Aurobindo says that the central aim of knowledge is the recovery of the self, of our true self-existence. And this is the quotation from the Synthesis of Yoga. What is interesting here is that he is using the word recovery, not discovery. That means our self is to be recovered. It is somewhere there, but it is clouded or clouded by our thank you. By our darkness, by the part of ourselves which is not seeing ourselves. We are consistent of two parts. One is very inconscient, which is growing from that very inconscience, which Lord was mentioning in the quotation of Savitri, and the other is very conscious part within ourselves. So we constitute the reality of two beings. And to recover ourselves means to recover it in the darker part, means to bring the light more and more to the front and to illumine the darker part of our consciousness. That is our self, fallen self. He speaks also of three Vedic epistemologies, three Vedic approaches to knowledge. In the ancient conception of the universe, our material existence is formed from the five elemental states of matter, ethereal, aerial, fiery, liquid, and solid. Everything that has to do with our material existence is called the elemental adhibhuta. In the material, non-material powers manifesting through the mind force, life force, and work upon matter, and these are called gods or devas. Everything that has to do with the working of the non-material in us is called adhidaiva, that which pertains to the gods. So you can clearly see that adhibhuta has to do something with our scientific approach. When we look outside and we see the world as it is, so we perceive things through these elements of ether, fire, air, water, and matter. But within this material existence, consciousness, there is non-material power of our mind, of our vital, and they are very active. We basically live 80% our inner life, though we are dealing with our outer being. We always think, feel, we are always preoccupied with our thoughts and feelings, mostly, not with the outer world so much. So these are the forces which are non-material forces within material universe, and they are called devas in the Upanishads. But above the non-material powers, containing them, greater than they, is the self, or spirit, Atman. And everything that has to do with this highest existence in us is called the spiritual, Adhyatma. So it seems that these forces within us are not the only forces, the inner feelings and thoughts, but there is something greater than them, containing them within ourselves, is the self. So I made a scheme here just for us to see that Adhyatma is in the center. This is our innermost, inner core of ourselves. There is Adhidaiva, next level of our inner self, and Adhibhuta, our outer look outside. And what is interesting about this scheme is that, for example, Chandogya addresses the same issue, what is Brahman? And the description is very beautiful. It is given in this way, that Brahman is the space outside. And who knows Brahman is all this space, he knows Brahman. But Brahman is also the space inside, continues Chandogya. And the one who knows Brahman is space inside and outside, space inside and outside are identical, says Chandogya. It is the same space, knows Brahman. But Brahman also is the space within the heart. And the one who knows Brahman as a space within the heart, within ourselves and outside, as one Brahman, he knows Brahman. And you can see this beautiful and profound concept which is actually destroying all our presumptions about the spirit. The spirit is outside and inside and innermost the same spirit, the same Brahman. This is the quotation from the Life Divine, which is necessary for us to understand how the faculties correspond to the unknown. So the unknown is not the unknowable. It need not remain the unknown for us unless we choose ignorance and persist in our first limitations. For all things that are unknowable, all things in the universe, there correspond in that universe faculties which can take cognizance of them. And in man, the microcosm, these faculties are always existent and at a certain stage capable of development. We may choose not to develop them. Where they are partially developed, we may discourage and impose on them a kind of atrophy. But fundamentally, all possible knowledge is knowledge within the power of humanity. This is a very optimistic statement of Sri Aurobindo. All possible knowledge is knowledge within the power of humanity. So we are looking for this knowledge, whether it is really possible. So here is the scheme with the colors, and Adhidaiva is our faculties of consciousness: sight, hearing, thought, feeling, word. That what we know as senses, later indriyas. Aurobindo somewhere says that indriyas are infinite. They do not belong only to the sense mind. They go far beyond any mind. They pervade the whole universe. But if we turn our senses, our faculties outside, we will have this adhibhuta approach. We will see outer world. We open our eyes, ears, we listen outside, we touch everything outside, we want to understand, and things work outside. But if we turn them inside, we will see something else with the same faculties. We will discover the self which is unborn, which is within ourselves. So we can see the self outside in its multitude, or we can see it inside in its oneness. It is the same self, only it is projected by consciousness differently. It is perceived differently. And that difference in perception creates the multitude creation here. And in the Upanishads it's said that the wise closed his eyes, closed his ears, closed all his senses from outside and turned them within. And that what we do usually in meditation, we do the same thing. We close all our senses to the outside and turn them within. And this is the only way how we can really perceive our inner reality. Moreover, there is more complex thing there, because we have to also specify our karmendriyas, our senses of action, indriyas of action. That means we have to be passive, immobile. So all yogic practices are about that, how to get immobile for a long time. That's why we have asanas before pranayama, because asanas will help us to stay still and relaxed for a long time when we turn our senses within. And the description is given also in the Gita that one is withdrawing senses from the object of sense as kurma, as torturing, withdraws limbs inside, because then we will have to turn them within and discover our inner self. So this was the ordinary yoga, so to say, in the post-Vedic period, that the perception of outside was not so important and the perception within was more important. So there was a denial of outer nature, of our outer energies, so to say, and we turned them within to discover our inner self. By the way, this became the biggest problem for the next generations. There was the development of the whole Advaitic approach, means that we will perceive the inner reality and leave outer reality as unreal, as an illusion. That's what Shankara says, the Jagat Mithya, as you know, and Brahma Satyam. The spirit is truth, but the nature is false. There was the whole philosophy developed that in order to perceive the inner nature, the outer has to go. And by the way, in Savitri, when Savitri meets, Satyavan meets Savitri for the first time, he says the same thing. He says, when I turned to nature, spirit disappeared. When I turned to the spirit, nature disappeared. He couldn't keep them both. You see the problem we have. We can't keep both. This is a fundamental problem. We can be either perceptive of the inner self or active outside. When we are active outside, we lose the perception of the inner self. From here we have all this methodology developed that we have to be still and immobile because we want to perceive the inner self. Otherwise we would not be able to do it. If I will go and work in the garden, I am not able to perceive inner self. But Sri Aurobindo developed another type of yoga, Vedic yoga, and we will talk about it, that these two have to be present, the outer and the inner perception. And here is his contribution and his recovery of the Vedic knowledge. Vedic view was very different. I will come to it in a minute. So, consciousness operates basically on three levels. On Adhyatma level by secret operations, according to Sri Aurobindo, which we will study in detail today even, Samjnana, Ajnana, Vijnana and Prajnana, and on the Adhidaiva level by the faculties of consciousness of this, what we call mind, word, hearing, seeing, manas, vak, chakshuk, shrotram, Sanskrit terms. And on the Adhibhuta level, by senses, indriyas of Sankhya, which are subordinate to the sense mind. So if we come to this scheme again, we can see that the consciousness operates on all three levels by secret operations, on Adhyatmic level, on Adhidaivic by the faculties known to us as mind, word, sight, hearing, and on the Adhibhuta level by senses, which are creating organs of eyes, ears, and it's kind of interesting that we all have eyes, ears, we all hear, see, all of us, not only human beings, but also animals and insects and birds. All of us share universal consciousness, though we are individuals. So to say, we operate by the universal consciousness, but we think we see. We have a sense that we understand, we hear, we think. But truly speaking, it's very little of us there in our operations of consciousness. It's more universal. So Sri Aurobindo basically, I will come to Sankhya now in a minute. So Sri Aurobindo says that in the Vedantic ancient yoga, there was another approach, and he quotes from Kenna. He says that neither turning within only, nor without, but making these faculties channels to channel the inner sense, the inner light to the surface. They have to turn within and become, as he says, consciously passive, consciously perceptive of the inner self, but not to act, but to allow that light to come to the surface. It's very difficult to do because our indriyas, our senses, our faculties are looking for self-satisfaction all the time, and that creates our ego sense. We like to see beautiful things. We want to hear beautiful harmonies. We want to have pleasant touch. We want to have good taste, nice smell. We want to satisfy senses because, truly speaking, even not we, but the senses want this satisfaction. We are not aware of this. We think that it's we who want satisfaction of our senses. But they make us do this work. They are forcing us to do it because they are seeking their self-satisfaction. And Sri Aurobindo says that in the Kena, the whole thing is a very beautiful parabola, this story about Brahman and these great faculties, Indra, Vayu and Agni. And they thought that they are the creators of the universe. They are the doers of all deeds. But truly speaking, they didn't see the real spirit behind that. They thought that they were engaged, they were doing it. The same as our indriyas, our senses. They are thinking that they are perceiving, they are enjoying the world. But then when they recognize who was behind them, that Brahman is behind them, they changed. And this is what Sri Aurobindo takes into his yoga. And he says that these indriyas, these senses, have to become only channels of Brahman and bring that light to the surface. And it is very difficult to do. We will have a long period of not satisfying them in their ordinary way. That means we will have to look only for the highest satisfaction, for the highest light in us. And that we have to channel to the surface. You can imagine how difficult it is. They will revolt. In few days, in few weeks, they will revolt. And they will create such a depression in our being that we would want them back with all their satisfactions. And whoever tried this yoga, I'm sure they know about it very well. I tried many times. And many times I called them back because it's unbearable. There is a long period where the light is not coming. When the light is coming from within, then it is fine. It's very pleasant and we can go on. But when there is no light coming, there is a gap, then after some time we call them back, saying, okay, come back. It's much better with you than without you. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Right, otherwise you look, you never know. So, proposal of Sri Aurobindo is profound. He says that the inner light should come to the surface, and only in that way we will know what is on the surface. To know what is this world about, there is only one way, to bring that inner light to the surface. Indriyas, senses, faculties cannot know it. By themselves they cannot do it. Neither our mind, nor our speech, nor our inspirations, that's all that Sri Aurobindo will be describing, is built on our inconscient being. It grew up, rooted deeply into the inconscient. And it cannot know that light. It can create its own universe, as we did. And we live in this universe we created by these faculties, and we think it is real. But it is only partially real. And Sri Aurobindo calls this ignorance. Ignorance is a partial knowledge. All right. So it makes sense. If I make a different scheme, I should draw not inward or outward these errors, but I have to draw only channels from Adhyatma to Adhibhuta. Only channels which are coming from inside out. I didn't draw it, so I'm just saying it. So, faculties of consciousness in Sankhya. And what is interesting about Sankhya, Sankhya appears approximately 800 BC, and it creates another approach to knowledge, which we know as mental structure of consciousness, where the mind dominates everything. So, all the senses, all these faculties depend on manas, sense mind, as their sixth sense. So these faculties now supply manas with information without which they cannot operate. It is by manas the eye sees, it is by manas that ear hears, and so on. This is the quotation from Yajnavalkya from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. We see by manas, we hear by manas, we understand by manas. And we could agree with it, yes. If our mind is not there, I may see, but I don't see. I don't register what I see. You can see how the shift took place. So we are no more seeing independently from the mind. We depend on the mind, and through the mind we see. We forgot how to see without the mind operating and paying attention to our faculties. We lost the capacity to see without mind attending to it. We lost the capacity to hear without mind attending to that hearing. We became completely mentalized beings. We are always in our mind, in our sense mind. So this is a scheme of Sankhya, which is kind of important. Sankhya draws this picture of Purusha, the self, the unborn self, individual. Sankhya doesn't have the universal self, only individual selves. There are many Purushas and one Prakriti or Pradhana. Prakriti and Purusha are two infinite beings, he and she, who create all these varieties of things. So Pradhana has Rajas, Tamas and Sattva, three gunas, which are in equilibrium, and when Purusha pays attention to her, looks at her, then she moves and mixes those three major gunas, qualities, and creates this variety of things, universe. Buddhi is the first creation, the higher reason, the pure reason, the higher mind, the capacity of illumined, I would say, illumined and higher and mind capacity, or pure reason, better to say. Ahamkara is this knot which is making individual perception possible within our being, which is followed by manas. Manas, sense mind, and then we have the whole scheme. We have 5 Mahabhutas, ether, air, fire, water, and earth. We have 5 Indriyas, hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell. We have 5 Karmendriyas, Vach, Pani, Pada, procreatory and excreatory organs. And of course we have tanmatras, those subtle states of matter, ethereal, aerial, fiery, liquid and solid, which are creating all these varieties. By the way, it's kind of interesting that these indriyas here, hearing, touch and sight, and taste and smell, taste and smell are coming from elsewhere. It's kind of interesting. They are not mentioned in the Upanishads. They are more of a gross matter, if you notice. Taste has something to do with the liquid state. There is always some watery state. And smell has to do something to do with particles of matter. Without particles of the other self, which are coming to us, we cannot have smell. But the higher faculties, hearing, touch, and sight, are mentioned in the Upanishads. By the way, I can give more concrete exposition on these tastes and smell. They are mentioned in Upanishads differently. They are coming from the lower creation, from the inconscient ocean. They were there, the hunger and thirst. And this hunger and thirst in the lower waters entered our higher consciousness and created in the faculties this urge to satisfy themselves. They became hungry and thirsty for the creation. And that's why we want always to satisfy them. So this hunger and thirst in our inconscient being forces us to satisfy senses and go on creating this world as separate being. It's a very intelligent device, by the way, how to make us work in this separated consciousness. We can go more into detail when we will have time for those of you who would like to look deeper into this topic. But for now I can say that they are only here mentioned in Sankhya as a part of the whole system of manifestation. But notice here, they all depend on manas. I will give a better picture next one. Oh, here they are. Sri Aurobindo gives a very beautiful description of how they unfold from manas. From ether, it's one-dimensional reality, and then air, there is two-dimensional reality. It's like a twist in the air, the first touch of wave within the wave. And then this wave within the wave becomes a knot. The third dimension comes, it becomes a heat. It is heated up. And the light appears, the fire, and if you add one more dimension, it becomes liquid, uninterrupted substance without form. It doesn't have yet form, and then it is one more dimension, it is formed. It is solidified, and it becomes matter. So everything comes from ether by adding one more dimension. It's kind of interesting view of Sankhya. There are more things to be said here on Karmendriyas and Jnanendriyas, but maybe I will skip it. Our Jnanendriyas are those faculties of knowledge. Hearing, you see, is the first of ether, on the level of ether. The word, the touch is that twist. The sight is that fire, the light. The taste is that uninterrupted substance without form, and smell is something already formed into the gross matter and the particles of which we perceive. I would encourage you to interrupt if you have questions. I like always interruptions, so please be...
I'm interested in the connection between sight and feet.
Right. Well, everybody is interested in this part because it looks like not fitting into the system, as if they made up artificially the system. And we discussed this in our sessions. We had seminars, pre-seminar events. There was the same question of sight and feet. Right. There was a beautiful suggestion from Rod, and there is this motion, movement. What is really seeing, if we examine this faculty? What is seeing, according to you? How would you describe? What is happening when we see? It's interesting, yeah? We just never think about it. We don't think about these things. Form. We see the form, yes. We measure distance, so there's a suggestion, very nice suggestion.
Movement.
Movement. There is a movement of some kind. What is moving? Light is moving, very nice. The photons, the light, is moving from one. We think it is reflecting the light, and light is reflecting into our eye. This is the movement, and
Yeah, I would add also that in relation to fire and sight, the light extends over a vaster space, and it gives us the perception of somewhere to go. Distance has to be transited. It's the principle of locomotion in Aristotelian philosophy. If we didn't know that there was something at a distance, we wouldn't move towards it.
right.
For me, it's
Becoming space.
We talk many times these days that light is coming to us from very, very far, 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 the galaxy taking billions of light years. As though something is flowing and is being recorded by our instruments, the whole range of intricate instruments that human beings have created. So as though something is flowing, hitting those lenses or the system, and being recorded, and it has obviously, from their point of view, started some billions of light.
Right.
The invisible is moving into the visible.
Invisible is moving into the visible. It's a koan of some kind. Beautiful.
Vladimir,
Yes,
I
yeah,
have some questions relating to what you said in the earlier part.
right.
One is about Brahma, that you said to know Brahma. You talked about the three types of Brahma. Is there not also Brahma that is unmanifest? Or do they not talk about that?
Well, in Chandogya there are three Ds. In the heart, inside and outside is the same space. It's already a great revelation. If it is the same space, can you imagine? The inside the heart, inside ourselves and outside is the same one Brahman. Well, mind stops here. It doesn't go further. You can't really... Yes, it is also transcendental, definitely. It is always transcendental, otherwise it would be not the same space in all these locations.
I mean, there's something beyond the universe and beyond creation. That's what I'm relating to. It's a concept that I find very attractive. That there is a Brahma before the Big Bang, let's call it that way. There's some consciousness that is there, unmanifest. So is also that, that's why is it not coming in?
But Brahman within the heart, how would you see it?
I mean, for me it's very different. It is manifested. So
Okay.
that's why.
For me, within the heart, it is in that ocean of heart. I'm taking a Vedic image, which is beautiful. It is transcendental. It is coming from that transcendental world. But yes, there can be, philosophically speaking, one more level, Turiya, the fourth one, which is going beyond these three, holding them, and yes, one can speak about it.
The other point that I wanted to ask you about was when you talked about the ancient Shankara, you talked about the way.
Advaita.
Yeah, and are you sure that in ancient times there was not this relation? Why you're sure that they were not looking at matter as being a manifestation of divine, and they were having to go inward, and so they made this separation of the outside and the. This is what I understood you talked about. But I'm asking whether it was really the way of yoga in the past, or I mean, where do you base yourself that that was? What, for example, what you said, Shobindu brings in a new dimension, and then you relate it back to the ancient Vedic, which maybe was also the same.
Right.
There was no separation. And another point I wanted to make to that, because you said that is very difficult, and I think it's not at all difficult, the relation. When we adore a deity, an object outside, I think if I'm not mistaken, that's exactly what you're creating. And there's a lot of music that has been created in adoration of gods and goddesses. And it's a bridge again to what you were talking about when you meditate, going inward and the adoration outside, so they get again together, is it not?
There are several questions here and several answers at the same time. The one thing I can say that, of course, I didn't go into the Vedic, but if I would go into it, it would be a different paradigm, Sri Aurobindo's paradigm, and you're absolutely right. There was before another view on this world, that inner world has to come to the surface, and that was the sacrifice. After, in post-Vedic literature, we don't have the sacrifice. We don't have this concept. It disappears. It becomes only a ritual. But before, it was a constant transformation by the inner light, the outer being, the outer nature. This was the major engagement of the rishis. They didn't look for mukti, for liberation and emancipation. There is no liberation or emancipation in the Veda, in general. You will not find it. There is no mukti in the Rig Veda. Nobody is looking for it. Why? They don't need mukti. They already have it. They are looking for the change in nature. They want to bring that force to do the work here. They are interested in this world more. They have already, they presume the oneness and they are looking for diversity. We presume diversity and looking for oneness. We completely kind of changed our perspective. And that's why our oneness is so dear to us. We want to have it. They have it already there. They don't need mukti, but they want to change nature. And that's constant invocation of higher forces of light to come and to work here and to transform nature. Transformation of our outer being is the sacrifice.
It's, I think, interesting that Sri Aurobindo's interpretation of the Isha Upanishad, which we heard in the line of Savitri a while ago, to realize the million-bodied one is putting the two together. And he says very specifically in that commentary that this is a concept that can't be grasped mentally. To actually put the perception and awareness of the one and its million bodies together requires a change of consciousness. So the questions that he's asking, are based upon the difficulty of the mind to really grasp this paradoxical reality, which in one period of time is seen this way, and in another period of time is seen that way, and finally we need to go to another level of energy to perceive the reality.
Right. The change which came in our post-Vedic period was exactly that. What Sri Aurobindo describes, he says that it is because of Vedic rishis couldn't transform earthly nature. They failed to transform earthly nature because humanity was not ready. That there was a split on two paths. One went for Advaita, for the spirit. India took that path to deny nature and prefer the spirit. And it was needed. Otherwise we would lose the path altogether. And the other half, the Chaldean tradition, went for science, for matter. They held this idea of material, occultistic view. And the whole Western, as we see civilization, is about matter, forgetting the spirit. But now they have to come back together. This is the only chance for us to really to fulfill that split, to bring them back together in the Vedic sacrifice. So that we need both. You see, this division in this scheme on Adhyatma and Adhidaiva and Adhibhuta is fundamental. It's about this. Either outer perception or inner perception, or both. All is in this simple scheme. Yes.
You're talking about having both, that both are important and both are needed, and maybe human consciousness wasn't ready to kind of flip over. You're saying there's a change happening, which I'm a young person who sees that change. Do you know in research how much time that change is going to take? Or is it something that we don't know?
Who knows these things? But they are here already knocking at our doors. That's why we are sitting here talking about this. It's unimaginable to talk about this even 20 years back.
It's very true.
We know how it was 20 years back, those of us who are a little older than you.
Is there some sort of timeline in studies that, like the Mayan said, it doesn't work meditation? Or is there some sort of timeline that...
There is no timeline. Truly speaking, all depends on our consciousness. Yes, Doug?
Well, there is a timeline, but it's dependent upon creativity. And so the things which Sri Aurobindo is speaking about were also the things that his yoga was attempting to make accessible to us. And he's very explicit about the necessity for another power of consciousness to manifest if we are really going to see the reality of things and not be moving back and forth. And so if there's any truth in that at all, then that energy of consciousness is manifesting. But it's the result of a yoga, it's not the result of a Mayan calendar.
Yes.
You just said that 20 years ago one couldn't imagine sitting here and talking about this. So you look at this as progressive, but this is essentially a mind exercise. So it's like, what are we doing here beyond mind? Like, what is the purpose of this type of knowledge? This, you see what I mean?
I see that you mean mind as a negative term, but I see mind as a very positive force of consciousness which can be used and can be applied, can be transformative, illumined mind. It can have can bring clarity to ourselves, what we have to do. It will not do the job totally, but it will do it partially. And we will see how partially it does its job. The whole exercise today is to see how these faculties contribute to this overall, what you are interested in. It's only one part, 1/6 of the whole vision of the faculties. It's not the central part. We are using mind because we are mental beings. There is nothing wrong to do it, no? I guess we can't do it without it. Or what would we do without mind? It won't be doing much. We would either fall into the previous stage of the vitalistic beings, or to go beyond mind, we need mind. In order to go beyond mind, mind should be there. How would we go beyond it without it?
But isn't it the same as this feeding of the senses that you speak about, that we just go back to that hunger and that satisfying that? Isn't it just that? It's whether it's
It might be. It might be also partially that. I agree. If you are staying there, if we are staying there and satisfying our senses only, we can be falling into this, limitation. You're right. But we are trying to shoot beyond, truly speaking. At least I thought we are doing it. At least we intend to do it.
There's a stage of development that Sri Aurobindo is quite emphatic about, and that is the process of universalizing the mind. So when we consider these principles, what we're doing is we're focusing our mind on universals. We're moving thinking towards thinking of things that are universal. And this is absolutely necessary in order to move beyond the immediate reactions of the sense mind. Then when we're dwelling in the idea of a universal faculty that is not our mind and our senses, but it is sight. And we can notice, we can begin to perceive sight as a universal faculty of consciousness, and consciousness as a universal self in things. Then, this is the building, the stairway to something beyond the mind. The alternative is to get a pass and go to the Mati Mandir and sit there. But then you feel something that you don't actually know anything about. So then how to integrate a higher energy of consciousness with our normal consciousness? It requires will, and the will is given some directions about where to go with it. So I think that's what we're trying to chart out a little bit the path.
Yes, to bring this light into this nature is not enough just to bring it. We have to be totally conscious of what is happening. And this is difficult. To be totally conscious of this change. We have to know it, to see it, to understand it. We are not doing our homework. We rely, okay, let him do, I am fine, I will come, I feel good, I will do the work. I'm like a child in the garden, we'll be playing, yes? It's also a path, but Sri Aurobindo's yoga was more precise, more about also knowledge and knowing what is happening. So we are trying to understand it here. Of course we will use our mind, definitely. We can't do it without it. And you also cannot even question this question without it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would not discard mind too soon. I would rather use it as a tool to get rid of its kind of dependency on it. So actually this was the whole presentation, the point that Sankhya presents to us, the view that we all depend on the mind, and the sense mind. And your objection is absolutely true. We are going into the pre-Sankhyaik paradigm where mind is one of the faculties and not dominating other senses. And in a way, you intuitively feel that, I guess, that mind should not dominate other faculties. And it's actually a very good intuition. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to actually to ask a more basic question. This is about the moment when you said they tried to bring it down and they failed, because I don't know anything about that part. I only know about what happened after. Like my education doesn't go to that point.
Yes, our education is not reaching so far. In general, we don't have that information, but we could see that those of us who study the Vedas, we can see what they were doing. It was a completely different yoga. And by the way, this descent from above is only in the Vedas. In the post-Vedic India, you don't have this descent. There is no Maha Kundalini coming from above. There is always Kundalini coming from below. All the Tantra, all the development which is following later, changed the whole view on our development. We don't have anymore that Vedic yoga of descending light and these great gods into our being. Who are these gods? These are faculties of the universal consciousness. They are coming down and creating here greater space. They are making loftier our being, our nature, which becomes more and more perceptive to the spirit. That was their work. But this is no more the case, you know. We are no more looking at our life as a transformative practice. But now it comes back slowly. In the West, there are more and more new ideas adopted from the East, and these transformative practices, transformative psychology, you have it in business, in everywhere. They're looking for something which will be dynamically true, which will be sustainable, which will live and develop and grow, and so on. So we have this kind of need coming back to us of this unity, of this union of the spiritual and material. Yeah, it's not so easy to realize, but because we're so determined in our mind, we think our mind decides everything, as in Sankhya, but it is not so. So I'm coming to this pre-Sankhyaik paradigm. In the pre-Sankhyaik paradigm, there are three constant dvandvas mentioned in the Upanishads, Manas and Vak, Chakshuk and Shrutram, and Prana and Apana, or Prana and Annam. Annam, Pranam, Chakshuk, Shrutram, Manovacham. Iti. So I will draw the diagram which will help us to see. We have these three dvandvas, Manas, Vak, Manas mind, Vak word. So mind and word is one dvandva constant. Dvandva is a pair. They always go in pairs. Mind and word, always together. Chakshuk and Shrotram, always together. And Prana and Apana, breathing in and breathing out, always together. Here they are. I put English words also for you, just that it will help you. So you will see that this diagram is very simplistic in a way, but it gives us all the major faculties of consciousness. And they are not dependent on the mind. Mind is one of them. Thinking is one of them. The word was free from the mind. Can you imagine that? It wasn't an indriya, a sense of the sense mind, to provide with some information. It was an equal member of consciousness. So the word, as Sri Aurobindo says, could create the thought, could create the idea, could. The word is the parent of the idea in the Veda. The word as a force, as an expression of consciousness, could manifest or create the idea, the thought.
Maybe it's good to remind our minds that these faculties, which are named there, are devas.
Right.
And devas are universal emanations of the self. So then word is an emanation of the self. It's not a product of the mind. Mind is another emanation of the self. So to broaden our normal conception of these things is necessary. We have to elevate our normal conceptions of these things to another way of seeing them.
Right. These are the faculties of the universal Purusha. When the universal Purusha was first at the beginning, his mouth broke forth, from his mouth word, from his word fire was born. When his nostrils broke forth, from his nostrils prana, from prana vayu, the wind was born. And his eyes broke forth, from his eyes sight, from the sight the sun was born, the light. When his ears broke forth, from his ears hearing came out, and from hearing the space was born. Now, if you look at this paradigm, you will see immediately that the whole outer nature, the space, light, everything was born because there was a need to see. So it's not because of the light that we develop our eye, but because there was a need to see that the light came into existence. Because there was a need to hear that the space was born. So the consciousness creates its own habitat, its own expression, domain in which it can be exercised. And this universe is the domain of these faculties. These varieties of galaxies and infinite space is nothing but the manifestation of this consciousness. So these are the faculties. I had before different names written there, not English, but Vedic devatas, but I removed them with the request of some people that would be better if they would be in English. Now we have them in English. There are no cosmic devatas mentioned here. But nevertheless, it's not so bad. So if we look at this diagram, we can see interesting thing. We can see manas and, so to say, thought and seeing on one side, as you see it on the left side, and on the right we see Shrotram and Vak. These are two major counterparts of the same faculty. Hearing is perceptive and speaking is active. Speaking is expressing in sound. So to say, this is one faculty of hearing as perceptive and seeing as and speaking as active. The same on the other side. Seeing is perceptive, but thinking is active. If we would think how we would be actively hearing, it would be the word, speaking. If we think how we would be actively seeing, not perceptively. Perceptively we perceive, but actively seeing, so to say, acting by seeing, it would be thinking, imagining. So basically, these are only two faculties of the seeing and hearing. And in the middle, there is feeling and touch, which is more prana and apana, breathing out, breathing in and out, which creates this world. It brings the spirit into the matter, manifests the spirit in matter, makes it animated. You see, this body is animated. It has anima inside, it has life inside. Life entered it. It can obey my command, my will. It can do the most incredible things. It listens to me. Whatever I want, I can will, and it listens. Is it not amazing? It's a very amazing thing. So the spirit came into matter and settled here by these major faculties. And these manas and chakshu, manas and vak and chakshu and shrotram are known in the Upanishads as Brahma Chatushpad. Brahman on 4 legs, or on 4 pillars. These are the pillars by which Brahman could enter this creation. And you notice that manas and chakshu, so thought and seeing, reflect the form, rupam, whereas shrotram and vak reflect nama, name. So there is another word for it, another dvandva, nama and rupa, name and form. It is by name and form that Brahman has settled, has come down here. Makes sense? And this name and form are two realities in our world. And if you take any reality, again, mouse is here, I don't want to take glasses. What do you see? We see and we understand what we see. It's a very simple exercise, but you can understand immediately. What do you see? Somebody can describe, what do you see? What do you see? Yeah.
A black mouse.
Black?
A black
mouse. You see black mouse, you call it mouse, but how do you know that it is mouse? Black object. We do, yeah?
I see it as a thought, materialized.
Thought materialized. It's too sophisticated for us, but nice.
And we're all conditioned?
Are we all conditions to give it a name so we understand?
Right, very true. You're immediately going to the core. We can't really describe this object. We cannot know it without the name. You describe black. Even black is a name. You can't really know what it is. And even mouse is a name. Black, so thought materialized is the word. Everything we understand by the word. We see something, we apprehend it, but comprehending it, we need the word. We need the name, which would explain us what this thing does. And it is not visible what it does. It's not visible.
It is a social creation by agreeing together a group of people. If we showed it to somebody who would never seen anything like this, he would quite
Exactly. But suppose I take some other sky. Let us say the sun. What would you know about it? What would you say? What do you see?
But, I mean, this is still the point, because the act of social construction is an act of language. We construct things together through the word. If we met somebody who didn't know that word, they would have another way of explaining what it is that would rely on concepts which are represented as words. So it's inescapable.
So whatever object we see, where there will be two movements, one will be apprehensive, that we see something, and other how we understand it, what it is, understanding, comprehending, which goes beyond seeing, which goes into the hearing, into the name. And it doesn't mean that only we have the name, the faculty of speech, because other creatures also have their ways of comprehending things, their own languages, their own words to use, their own comprehension, maybe hidden, maybe not known by us, maybe we cannot understand it because we speak another language, but it is there, it's definitely there. So this was the division on nama and rupa, on the comprehensive nama and apprehensive rupa. Form is always apprehended, but it is never understood without the name. Makes sense, no?
What do you say about music? It has no form. You don't know any name. You still hear it. What do you do with it?
You always create some challenges.
It just appears. There's no.
What would you say?
It goes
Lots of. What would you say
it goes beyond
about the
words.
music?
It's something direct. It's like when you hear the sound of an earthquake, you just know something is wrong. You run. I mean, there's no word for it.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
The thing about hearing, and what puts it in that category of comprehension, is that it comprehends. And so what it comprehends is the meaning of the thing. And with respect to music, that meaning of the thing is the word. It's the expression of the meaning. And so the two are identical in the comprehending act of consciousness. But you can think about them, and you can see the notes on the paper, and by thinking about them and seeing the notes on the paper, you don't know a damn thing. You only really know it when you hear it, and then you know the whole. So the apprehension and the comprehension are these two aspects of consciousness that are being indicated by these terms. And I think they apply pretty universally.
I don't think that you know anything. I think something knows something. Something knows everything, but for sure not you, because there would be no this progression. So this is a mantric element which comes into music, that it starts revealing itself to you what it actually is.
Right.
In order to be able to operate the music, they created the structure, they made name and they made form. So like this they can control, enjoy, and let it open to the source also. So they have instrumentation in music also, so create.
And yes, and they created their own comprehension within it,
What's there?
which is the big debate what it is, how to comprehend music. truly speaking, what music should be, and everybody has his own way of comprehending it according to his own set of names.
Sometimes we have a word, then there is a concept and a precept, and then we have a phenomenon. So there are many things that a word tries to encompass.
Right.
And that could be applied even to the word consciousness. It is a word, it is a precept, it is a phenomenon. So we try to encompass all that by saying comprehend, say consciousness.
Right. Right. You can see here.
To understand that there's so much confusion about it. The word has nothing to do with this thing without context. So, and then go a little bit further, like the bark. Now, what does that mean? That needs to be elaborated in one way or the other, and then that might be apprehension, and then you need a social context in order to distinguish between the tree bark and the dog bark.
Very nice.
Isn't that funny? But anyway, what I point out that the word has nothing to do with the thing. This is a social
Very
construction.
Nice. In our case, yes. In our case, it is social construction.
As much as the manual has nothing to do with the food.
Right. But where it is coming from, this word, as a social construction?
Sadly, often it has nothing to do with it.
Or the map, you know.
Yes, please.
Isn't music like what's reflecting back to what she said? Like music eliminates the mind into the fact that music is just frequencies, like colors that are just being output and being sensed by your body without having a need for your mind to put meaning to it. You feel it, you experience it. So,
Is that what music is?
according to me, I'm a musician. For me, that's what it is.
Just vibrations and...
Very interesting discussion. We will come to it, what music is again and again, many times during this. There will be the whole presentation by Lars of what music is and how it is. It would be very interesting to continue this.
Yeah, it's not about that, but just...
A very, very nice thought. Yes, I also think that music is purely comprehensive exercise without apprehension or too much apprehension. So to say, apprehension is there of notes and harmonies, of styles and instrument. There must be some physical carry of the music, otherwise we will not hear it in this physical world. Only in that vital world or beyond we would hear the harmonies, the symphonies, but we will never be able to bring them out. So to bring them out, we need to use...
Not always, huh? This conceptual music, John Cage 344. So it's just silence. So
Right.
You were interrupted, sorry about that. I'm the lucky guy who has the job of keeping our program more or less on track, so I'm going to step in now. But also, I feel like there's a danger now that this conversation can become kind of unbounded and it kind of disintegrates into these kinds of semantic distinctions that can take us away from the central purpose.